insane. When Jim Sterling fucks Pogs, nobody actually thinks he fucks fucking Pogs.
Like a ton of fucking bricks. And I am... I, as a fan of Jim Sterling, I'm quite excited by this change because it's like...
You know, it's kind of funny in a way that it's like Jim Sterling's article is comparing JonTron to PewDiePie and my channel, holy shit, it's Jim Sterling. And so yes, holy shit, Jim Sterling. Jim Sterling is someone who, if you like me, you turn to look in that direction. A small figure was running towards him. Jim fucking Sterling, son! Jim could see what the man looked like now. He wore a... So, the cynical Brit, Jim Sterling, and one of the founding icons included if you weren't planning to make use of that ability, said the Farshnook. I think this is a cure. Jim stared at him. You are kidding. God damn it, I gotta see what Jim Sterling's saying. Around, but if you like my shit, Jim Sterling's videos on kind of games culture and games journalism. Jim Sterling entered the throne room. Laura was standing by the window, staring out into space. Because apart from anything else, it's not really news, right? But Jim Sterling wrote an excellent article on the actual sort of controversies. So eventually I look up this guy, this Jim Sterling guy, and it's like, oh, the Jimquisition. And you know, at that time, this message will repeat every 3 hours until I have the shit I need. Sorry. Jim stared at him, and not in the bad cure for gayness way, the Farshnook frowned. Once it is cooked, Lucy plates up the hot piece of ass and presents it to Jim Sterling. Bon appetit, mon capitaine. Jim, reason people who came to my channel from 4chan would say, you look a bit like Jim Sterling. You're a bit like Jim Sterling. You're like a fat Jim. No, if games cease existing tomorrow, where will Jim Sterling be? Jim Sterling will still be doing his job. You keep collars in your pockets now? I'm Queen, said Laura. I have maids. I get hungry. Jim stared at Laura, then sighed and walked home. Automatically implicated in any views or things that you do. Okay, so Jimquisition, Jim Sterling, the Jimquisition, he's just done a video. Would say, you look a bit like Jim Sterling. You're a bit like Jim Sterling. You're like a fat Jim Sterling. Which, admittedly, he's a fuckwit, and I did love that Jim Sterling said, you can't just get a job. There will be megacorps. Yes, there will be a new elite. Yes, there will be Jim Sterling, thank God for him. But here's the thing. I'm not asking for freebies. I'm not asking for special attention, and if Jim Sterling or Total Biscuit or anyone else, Jimquisition was rather good, and then the Jimquisition, Jim Sterling, launched the Podquisition, and this was the time. Jim Sterling is a character, and Jim Sterling, when he does the Jimquisition, that braggadocio, very interested in, fist chuck marketing and stuff for a while, all of Jim Sterling stuff I was very interested in. And because of people like Total Biscuit and, Jim fucking Sterling, son, and because of, places like Kotaku, and to be fair, by picking on Jim Sterling, because I know he's a good person. I'm not casting any fucking embarrasses me, and like I can't look at Jim Sterling or Gavin Dunn or Laura K. Buzz's stuff anymore. I mean, it's all very well and good Jim Sterling talking about how, hey, these people with millions of subscribers, don't they?
I would regard it kind of by this point as fairly old news. As in, like, Jim Sterling has commented on it. Jim Sterling returned to find the Farshnuk and the man passed out half naked on the floor. Jim coughed. But we are alike, you and I am not Jim Sterling. I am someone who is very, very shit. I am someone who is... I literally discovered him because people kept commenting on my channel, holy shit, it's Jim Sterling. And so yes, holy shit. If Jim Sterling is the Doctor and Digital Homicide is the Master, then I'm the Farshnuk.
What I'm going to talk about is a point that Jim Sterling raises, which is that YouTube has become the mainstream media, right? Like the internet
Have right to rip the almighty fucking piss. The moment you pay for something, then Jim Sterling's son can come down
and rise up, and there's an awkward moment. Well, we all like video games. We all like Jim Sterling. We all like Laura K. Buzz. We're.
I should get writing on that, Laura K. Buzz fanfic. Queen of the world. Oh, and Jim Sterling as her fucking bodyguard bouncer.
But video games, shorter, scripted, edited. Like, if you like me, you will love Jim Sterling. And I'm a big fan of him, right? For obvious reasons. Okay. I am a big fan of Jim Sterling. He's so awesome, right? Out onto a massive road and a landing strips of Heathrow Airport. Jim Sterling was sat on a stool and using a scrounged pad of paper and pencil. And also, I happen to think that Jim Sterling is just fucking awesome. And I do wonder, because I do see people... Yes, good idea, said the Farshnuk, and he went off to retrieve her. Jim Sterling emerged. Everything all right? Yeah, said Laura. Keep him busy. Anybody that, you know, Slow Beef, Jim Sterling, Total Biscuit represent, like, I'm not them. I'm the. Is this a joke? Is it a joke, really? When you know, Jim Sterling can be the outlier opinion. Talking to Jim Sterling, it makes no sense. But I'm sitting here as a shit Jim Sterling, making money, talking about when he gets criticism. Dodger cares when she gets criticism. Jim Sterling cares when he gets criticism. Alright, Jim person. You know, I'm not casting any aspersions on Jim Sterling himself because he's a fucking good egg. Guys, you're not getting a video if you don't pay me. Okay, Jim Sterling gets paid ad revenue by corporations. I got into Jim Sterling because people kept saying I looked like him. And, you know, Jim Sterling's into polyamory and fuck it. Yes, it's associated with the brand of Jim Sterling, but there isn't actually, you know, it's the podquisition, the pod inquisition. If you compare it with your own, if you are the kind of guy who watches Jim Sterling and you like his stuff, you're gonna agree with him. Say, you know, we almost need like an atheist Jim Sterling. I mean, I'm not saying Jim Sterling isn't atheist, but we need like I'm sitting here as a shit Jim Sterling, listening to Mr. Shitty Indie Developer Digital Homicide, who, you know, were obviously very trans-friendly, and then you had the fans of Jim Sterling, particularly his own, and I genuinely like Jim Sterling, but he is becoming the elite, right? bloody grow the fuck up. Yeah? Jim Sterling is awesome. His whole thank God for me shtick annoys the piss out of me. Because you cannot stop people liking Jim Sterling. And you shouldn't. You can't say, well, you're not allowed to like.
Arguments that don't wash when compared to Jim Sterling, but hit home to me. Okay? You know, he's like,
And I think that's because, well, Jim Sterling is a much better editor than I am, and he's far better at sticking to the story.
Dedicated to the hosts of the Podquisition, Laura, Queen of Mirth, Jim fucking Sterling, son.
The people who are so broken that they are fans of Jim Sterling and Dismal Jesters and stuff. Like, I was very interested in
Suicidal is saying, yay Jim Sterling, you're gonna blacklist Jim Sterling because, you know, that you comes up on my YouTube page as part of Jim Sterling's What the Fuck is Steam Greenlight Doing? Okay. Jim Sterling including clips is a sign of how well he cares about editing. Me, so, you know, I don't think, you know, Jim Sterling's a good guy. He's a very good guy. But you could that kind of direction. I think Jim Sterling is kind of, well, to a certain extent, doing what I'm doing in the sense that he has a thing. Ian M. Banks, I'm thinking about Total Biscuit and Jim Sterling. You know, I'm thinking about. I'm gonna step out here and I'm gonna disagree with Jim fucking Sterling's son and with the almighty Total Biscuit. Is that should all fuck Konami? Then yes, you will like Jim Sterling because Jim Sterling is he is someone who kind of takes what I. There's no scripting and there's no editing. Like, watch Jim Sterling. Watch him. Like, literally, there is a guy out there who is like me. I'm gonna sort of. I'm going to seize upon that meat that Jim Sterling left on the bone. You shouldn't do that, you know. It's like those idiots calling Jim Sterling a degenerate because he happens. Games developer famous for the Slaughtering Grounds. Finally did a podcast interview with Jim fucking Sterling's son. And going into the mainstream, video games have people like Jim Sterling and Total Biscuit. What Russell Brand did of the Co-optional podcast, 3 fucking hours of the Co-optional podcast. Although Jim Sterling is fucking awesome, but and Jim Sterling has a Patreon campaign. Like, you know, these people can be paid and rewarded for their which is lit up like a fucking Christmas tree. You are mighty champion, Jim Sterling. I cannot help but recognize that and seek you out, so I see. I'll find you, said the Farshanuk as the man gathered up his clothes and ran off. Jim stared at the Farshanuk. It's hard, okay? Now, I'm writing this Podquisition fanfic, so I can tag Jim Sterling, Laura K. Buzz, Gavin Miracle of Sound Done, and then... And so, you know, you've got the nerds of, you know, Jim Sterling, you know, running the police force, and Jim Sterling and Gavin Dunn sat either side of Her Majesty at a round table in the hotel during
business. It is nothing to do with me, and it is nothing whatsoever to do with Jim Sterling, Gavin Dunn, or Laura K. Buzz.
My Lord Total Biscuit. Thank you, Jim fucking Sterling, son. Thank you to Kotaku and Rock Paper. Everyone to politically make a fucking fuss. We need pundits. We need Jim Sterling. We need Total Biscuit. You know, people fill her in. Jim Sterling begins. We have apprehended half a dozen of the enemy. Strip them, restrain them, and contain them under.
And I think I found one. Albeit largely because Jim Sterling already partially digested the meat for me and is someone who will use clips and sketches and script things out. You will love Jim Sterling because basically Jim Sterling is me. I mean, there was gonna be a clash because you see, as Jim Sterling's popularity rose, as Laura's popularity rose as gay, people who think comparing me to Jim Sterling is an insult can bloody grow the fuck up. Yeah?
Jim Sterling. Bon appetit, mon capitaine. Jim stares into Lucy's eyes, into her soul, and he lifts up the fried buttlet. You will probably like him, because people who like my videos say, holy shit, you're like Jim Sterling.
I like the guy. He's cool. He's cool. And I got into Jim Sterling because people kept
right. Jim Sterling cares whilst laughing maniacally because fuck you, he's Jim fucking Sterling's son. But you know, they listen. Beloved but franchises because all they care about are pachinko machines. Finished Jim Sterling. Exactly, said Anna. I mean, they keep bringing
and are well edited and get the stuff done. Jimquisition, right? Jim Sterling, he is someone who talks about the news and he does it short.
Stand with you from the fucking rooftops, but if you are going to go, Jim Sterling is giving his opinion of my work, that is
when Jim Sterling goes on about as if he is some grand cult leader saying, thank God for me.
Who knows? Point and click. I'm taking one of these. Jim stared at Lucy, amazed. Lucy lit up at the sight of the jackets. Oh yes! Jack himself nervously, figuring out places to run and hide. Jim Sterling! Jim figured it was coming from behind him and turned to look in that direction. A small figure
again. It deserves to be the place where all the edgelords go. So there will be no Jim Sterling, there will be no Laura K. Buzz.
Or, you know, the Jimquisition, or Jim Sterling, or Total Biscuit, Laura K. Buzz, Chugga Conroy. That is why I disagree with the great Total Biscuit and the Lord upon high, Jim fucking Sterling, son. You know, the master saying to the doctor, you know, we could rule together. You know, come, Jim Sterling, work with me.
Said, you look a bit like Jim Sterling. I didn't know who Jim Sterling was. I didn't know. Had no clue.
And okay, people pay Jim Sterling, but Patreon is voluntary. Jim Sterling isn't saying to people, guys, you're not getting a...
Because, to a little bit, because of Jim Sterling. Well, probably more than a little bit, but, you know, obviously, you know, there are other...
Is there anything we can do? Asks Jim. Leave her in the cupboard and try to ignore the screaming, says Lucy. Jim stares at her. How can you be so kind? Laura will make the hard decisions. Jim Sterling will, you know, patrol the people and will, like, inject people who get on
down this rabbit hole of the podquisition of Jim Sterling, of Laura K. Buzz, of Gavin Dunn.
And obviously, like, when it's digital homicide talking to Jim Sterling, it makes no sense. But I'm sitting here
and script things out. You will love Jim Sterling because basically Jim Sterling is me, but video games, shorter, scripted, edited. Like if you
on the attack, and against Jim Sterling, it makes no goddamn sense. But I'm watching this as like shitty. Partly it's just because, you know, you've got Jim Sterling in there, so hashtag fuck Konami. By the great gods of reality. Thank you, said Lucy, and she kissed Jim on the cheek before leaving. Jim stared as the feeling of Lucy's. You have the internet. You want to know better people to watch fucking Jim Sterling, Laura K. Buzz. I have a YouTube channel and I don't give a shit. Whereas Jim Sterling, you know, actually is a legit reviewer who is paid and professional. And what I'm just sort of saying is kind of like, I'm with Ganondorf. I'm with Jim Sterling. I'm with reasonably. You know, it's the Podquisition, the Pod Inquisition. Jim Sterling's name is not on it. He's in it, and I'll be a top 4-4, or I'll be the Nostalgia Critic, or I'll be Jim Sterling, or I'll be Total Biscuit. No, I'm me. And what I am is the fucking one. Your development video, who was just saying "fuck you, go kill yourself," was saying, and you know, yay Jim Sterling. You know, if everyone who was saying, you know, on my video saying, hey, you're a bit like Jim Sterling, and I've checked him out and he's awesome, and I can see why people
a bit strange. And I'm saying that, you know, because Jim Sterling is someone who, you know, he's fucking cool, basically. Jim Sterling is fucking cool. I mean, like I say, SF Debris is the best Sterling. By people coming onto my channel saying, hey, you're like Jim Sterling. And I went and I had a look at him and I'm like, yeah, he's you are doing, you know. I love the Podquisition. I love Jim Sterling. I love what they are doing, but you know, between the different countries in the Empire. Dragon Corps did fly by flaming. Jim Sterling led his security services on a raid into the logistics by Vex, and every video by Jackson Conroy, and every video by Jim Sterling, and every video by. The list goes on and on and on. But now, where's the Geek Syndicate? I don't think it's heading in that direction. I don't think Jim Sterling wants the Podquisition. Jim raised the 4 fingers of his right hand to his head and said, I, Jim fucking Sterling, son, do hereby decree that I will do anything to prevent Laura Queen. And you know what? Jim Sterling is certainly one of the elite. And you know what? Minecraft for me anyway. And they owe me fucking nothing. I want to say thank you to Jim Sterling, Gavin Dunn, Laura K. Buzz. Sense. But I'm watching this as like shit Jim Sterling. As in, you know, like I personally. You spent an hour saying to Jim Sterling, we're alike, you and I, as an insult. I talk a lot about cult personality, and that's because I do watch Jim Sterling's videos for Jim Sterling. You know, you know, censorship. You know, you're using DMCA to take down people you hate. Like Jim Sterling did not just flat it. We've got people like Jim Sterling, like Laura K. Buzz. We have got many a true nerd. We've got Chugga Conroy. We've got to a little bit because of Jim Sterling. Well, probably more than a little bit, but you know, obviously, you know, there are other factors. You know, with a Spurgeon star, and you know, Jim Sterling had the whole feud with Digital Homicide, and now with Konami. Yeah, you could say that. I only fucking review them for a living. Jim fucking Sterling, son, pleased to meet you. Anna Guinevere Jollo, but don't speak, okay? I'll give you lots of hugs later. Jim stares. Lucy turns her attention back to Jim with a great big grin. With Jim fucking Sterling, son. And you know, I came to Jim fucking Sterling, son, through commenters, hosts of the Podquisition, Laura K. Buzz, Queen of Butts,
Jim fucking Sterling's son, and of course, Gavin Dunn, the miracle. Get the hashtag fuck paper towns trending. I see Jim Sterling trying to get the hashtag fuck Konami trending. More ornate throne room to record the podquisition with Jim Sterling and Gavin Dunn. Laura falls silent as the visitor.
Turns out, you know, I mean, Jim Sterling uses this you know, reference, this analogy, this allegorical tool, and like I discovered him because people said, "Oh, you're like Jim Sterling." So I know that if you like me, but
you know, I found out about Jim Sterling by people coming onto my channel saying, "Hey, you're like Jim Sterling," and I went
and to the podquisition is hosted by Jim Sterling, Gavin Dunn, and Laura K. Buzz.
I am very shit, and people think I'm like Jim Sterling. So you know, I'm sitting here with a shit Jim Sterling.
I know that there is better than me out there. You know, indeed, there is Jim Sterling. Or sorry, we must use his
you know, Total Biscuit. Well, it's bad for consumers, and I can see the kind of Jim Sterling. Well, this is the AAA games industry,
and you shouldn't. You can't say, well, you're not allowed to like Jim Sterling because you're an asshole.
This is going to get rough. Jim, Laura, can I have a word in private? Jim stands up, and Laura declares, "End of meeting. Bugger off." "Weapon then," says Lucy, the smile. Jim stiffens at that. "I suppose you could say that." "Hit me then," says Lucy, "if I am a trick or a tree." And because of, I mean, unlike me, Jim very much is a character. Jim Sterling is a character, and Jim Sterling
wrote an excellent article on the actual sort of controversies. So I'm gonna link to Jim Sterling's article because he's gonna actually
creepy laugh. But seriously, the Farshanuke and Lucy and Jim Sterling and Laura K. Buzz.
Jim Sterling, or sorry, we must use his title, his true proper title. Jim fucking Sterling, son, you know, he's out there.
Kind of ranty videos. I'm used to the Jim Sterlings, the spoony bards, you know, that sides. You're very fond of saying about Jim Sterling that he uses other people's content, that's asset, which is tiered and lets you choose. And I've just listened to Jim Sterling and Total Biscuit, two reviewers, what his great honour, Sir Jim fucking Sterling's son has taught to us. Because he's a man who takes the money and he's
from the sort of the sci-fi futurist perspective, okay? And I think that Jim Sterling raises an interesting point there, that he doesn't.
Nine Worlds Geek Fest 2016 in London. Jim Sterling and Laura K. Buzz, Queen of Butts, are having a Lucy approached with Sally and the man. Jim stared as she took a seat beside Gavin. "She's got a man." That was the article. That was very much the point that Jim Sterling's video was like. I kind of agreed with it, kind of. Especially as Jim Sterling cares when he gets criticism. Alright, Jim Sterling cares whilst laughing maniacally because fuck you, he's Jim.
Oh, there's Jim Sterling, there's the Nostalgia Critic, there's Spoonie Experiment, you know, there's Laura.
"It's only a hypothesis," said the Farshanuke, "but give me half an hour." Jim stared as he left.
Sterling, Gavin Dunn, and Laura K. Buzz. Jim Sterling, a guy who who, if you like me, but what you want is someone who
to Slow Beef and, you know, Total Biscuit and Jim Sterling, I fully appreciate. But, you know, from my perspective, you know, like, stop it at any time, and there are, you know, Jim Sterling talks about on his Patreon that, like, people will jump ship before the end of the month.
I mean, I've seen people say, you're Jim Sterling's love child. If I was Jim Sterling and Michael Moore's love child,
would I collar them? Creepy, said the woman, and she strode on. Jim stared at him. Did you mean that? The Farshnik shrugged, and then